Howdy, y'all. There's something very important I need to do, and I promise I'm only gonna do it once, but I think after doing this job for 3 full years, I've earned this. Nah, 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 I got Kineticist early, you don't have it. I promise not to do that for another 3 years. Thank you. Howdy, my name is Nonat, and I'm an asshole. But, like I said, Rage of Elements has been delivered to me early by Papa Paizo, and I'll always appreciate you. But I have been told I'm only allowed to talk about one single section of the book. And it's the one that none of you really care about. It's just the Kineticist. Alright, I can't even pretend that I'm not pumped to be talking about this. Paizo has given me full legal, what's the opposite of embargo, to talk about the Kineticist before the book releases as PDFs on July 17th, and then comes out in physical copy in August. Y'all, this is looking so good. But you'll notice, this video isn't a class guide. No. I'm not making the Kineticist deep dive until the book is out. You know, I'm not just going to explain every part of the class when the class isn't even publicly available. What I will be doing, however, is ignoring the cars driving by my window and talking about the absolute basics of the Kineticist, because y'all, this class is complicated. Would I say it's as complicated as the Oracle? Yes. Yes, I would. But the thing with this class is it's only this complicated because you can do so many different things. This class, I would wager, is about twice as big as every other class in the game. I haven't actually measured page numbers, but there's already, I think, 26 pages about the Kineticist, and I want to say there were like 14 pages about the fighter. So put that into perspective. I'm sorry, you're gonna hear cars driving by, my window's open, I'm on the first floor, we're right on roadside, but it's hot and I don't want to sweat for you. So what are we covering exactly here today? Well, I'm covering all of the unique features and how they work for the Kineticist. You'll actually see that for once, I've put the video into chapters, and if you're interested in a specific thing, you can jump to that chapter, but they will make the most sense if you watch them in order. We're going to be going over picking your Kineticist element, or elements, channeling those elements, using elemental impulses and talking about what those are, using elemental blasts, which are your bread and butter as a class, your base Kinesis feature, and then we're going to end it off with gate thresholds and junctions. So if you want to jump to any of those, you can see them right on the scroll bar. Otherwise, stick around. We'll get to them eventually. And while you're here, please feel free to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, because this video is putting us at 50,000, y'all. Guarantee it. Yo, I'm just sliding in here to say that right now when this video goes live, I am streaming over on twitch.tv/nonat1s. We are back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday streams, 11 a.m. to roughly 2-ish p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's gonna be every single Monday, Wednesday, Friday, sometimes playing games, sometimes talking, sometimes playing games with y'all. It's gonna be awesome. It'd mean a lot if you came over and hung out. It's always fun, and the more people are there, the more fun we have. So thank you so much for your support. Enjoy the rest of the video. Starting off, picking your element is probably the single most important choice you make when creating a Kineticist. There are 6, that's right, 6 elements to pick from: earth, fire, water, air, metal, and wood. 6 different elements from different elemental planes, and it's a lot more complicated than just picking one element. But it can be that simple if you want it to be. This class really lets you get as wide or tall as you want. What I mean by that is you can double, triple down on a single element by taking a single gate as your subclass, or go wide and pick a dual gate as your subclass. I'm actually going to start by explaining the dual gate first. With the dual gate subclass, you pick 2 of the 6 elements, fire, water. You could be at the fire and metal Kineticist, or a wood and water Kineticist. And you get 2 impulse feats of those elements. Past the normal class feats of the Kineticist, there are actually additional sections of impulse feats organized by element. So there are wood feats and water feats, and you get to pick one level 1 impulse feat of each. I'll get to impulses later, but for now, that's all the subclass does for you. You pick 2 elements and you get 2 feats. However, let's look at the single gate. If you pick a single gate, you still get 2 first level impulse feats, they just have to be both of the same element. If you picked air, you get 2 first level air impulse feats. And the air impulse junction. This is a special effect that happens if you use an impulse effect that costs 2 actions or more. If you're level 1 as a single gate air kineticist and you use the aerial boomerang impulse, then you get to activate the air gate junction for free. What does that mean? Well, you can see right here, before or after the effects of the impulse, you can either stride up to half your speed or take a step action. And if you have a fly speed, you can fly instead. These are bonus free action type effects that come with your 2 or 3 action impulses. It's what makes the single gate worth taking. You don't get the 2 different elements, but you get a bonus effect when you use your bigger impulses of your chosen element. So think carefully when you want to start with 2 or 1 elements, and note that down the line, even if you start as a single gate kineticist, you can still get access to other elements while keeping your gate junction benefit from first level. Likewise, you can just triple down on your single element and unlock more unique abilities only of that element. Now, in order to utilize these elements, you need to channel them. Now, channeling your element is really simple. You just use the channel element action. For 1 action, if your element isn't currently being channeled, you channel it. And this is actually much more than just channeling a single element. This is you opening your kinetic gate. If you are a dual gate kineticist of fire and metal, when you channel elements, you channel both at the same time. You get surrounded by your kinetic aura of little flashing fireworks, sparks, and molding gelatinous metal. And this will allow you to use things like impulses. In fact, to even use an elemental impulse, you need to be channeling your element. Which, at first, this seems rough. This just seems like a 1-action tax, but luckily, when you use the action to channel your element, as part of that action, you can make a 1-action elemental blast, or use a 1-action elemental impulse. So luckily, this really isn't going to hold you back at all. It just means you can't start the fight with a massive 3-action burst impulse, but maybe you start with a 1-action impulse, follow it up with a 2-action impulse, and then on your following turn you can let out your real big mama explosion of air. And your kinetic gate stays active. You can use as many different impulses as you want, as long as you either A, don't fall unconscious, or B, don't use an overflow impulse, which we're about to talk about impulses, so let's get into that. Impulses are a fancy name for elemental spells that are not spells. The closest thing I could call them is spell-like abilities, which I know that's a D&D term, and I'll get 3 comments from weird tryhards complaining about me using that terminology, but it's what they are. These are abilities that are typically reactions or cost actions that create spell-like effects. In fact, they're even affected by certain things like counterspell. Any effect in the entire game that would prevent someone from casting spells will also prevent a kineticist from casting impulses. Even though they are feats and actions and not technically spells, they are considered spells for anything like that. And otherwise, impulses have a wide range of effects from weak to strong to roleplay to combat. Basically, an impulse is just an action that requires you to channel your element and utilize that element in some way. Even the Kineticist's basic feature, the elemental blast, is an impulse. And some impulses do come with the overflow trait. Like I mentioned before, you need to channel your elements to use it, and if you use an overflow impulse, you actually stop channeling your element. These overflow impulses are so powerful that it closes your gate for a massive effect, and in order to get back to where you were, you will need to rechannel your element, which luckily comes with a free elemental blast or one action impulse, but this is a really cool way for them to give Kineticists massive, like, 3-action overflow, world-busting abilities, but then it's going to be at least 2 turns before you can use it again because you'll need to rechannel, and then on the next turn you can overflow again. So there's sort of a few different ways to play the Kineticist. You can sort of spam your low action count impulses that never leave your kinetic gate closed, or you can go for sort of a 2-round cycle of channel, weak ability, next round overflow, next round channel, weak ability, next turn overflow. You know, it's sort of up to you, or you can save your overflow for when you think you can end the fight because you know your next turn is going to be weaker. It's a lot of fun things to play with impulses, and they've changed up the game from just attacks and spells, and I really respect that. With regards to impulses basically acting like spells, they have a level like a spell. Even if you took a first level feat impulse ability, if you're level 9, that impulse is considered level 9. And just like spells, a lot of impulses do heighten with character level. So as you level up, those first and second level impulse feats are gonna stay useful because they auto heighten, similar to a focus spell. A lot of these impulses are going to use attack rolls or saving throws, and this is where the Kineticist gets even weirder than other classes. A Kineticist doesn't attack with a weapon, and they don't attack with their dexterity or their strength. Rather, the Kineticist's impulse attack rolls are made with their class DC. And what I mean by that is it's the same formula to figure out your class DC, just without the flat 10. It is D20 plus attribute modifier, which is going to be Constitution, plus your proficiency bonus. So if you're trained at level 1, that's plus 3 from proficiency. Let's say you have an 18 in Constitution, that's a plus 4. Then you have D20 plus 7, that is your impulse attack roll, whether it's your standard elemental blast or something more specific. And likewise, your DC is just going to be that plus 10. If you've got an impulse that calls for a reflex save, it's going to be DC 17. You usually have plus 7 to attack rolls, so just add 10 to that, that's your DC. They've also added a new magic item known as a gate attenuator, which is basically how the Kineticist will get their plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, and I believe striking as well, similar to putting runes on a weapon. Now, I've talked about this like 3 times, so let's go over your elemental blast. This is a 1 or 2 action ability and is the bread and butter basic attack of the Kineticist. For 1 action, you throw a glob of your unrefined element at a target, dealing a certain amount of damage and a certain type of damage based on your element, as you can see on screen. This functions pretty much like a normal ranged attack. Double damage on a critical hit, normal damage on a normal hit, failure, crit failure, just completely goes off target. But you'll notice it's 1 or 2 actions. You know, if you only use 1 action, you're just rolling the flat dice. If you're an air Kineticist and you use a 1 action elemental blast, you're only dealing 1d6 electric or slashing damage. But if you spend 2 actions on it, you get to add your Constitution modifier to the damage. So all of a sudden, you're spending 2 actions to attack, sure, but that 1d6 just became 1d6 plus 4, which is huge, especially at low levels. And this gets even better if you're playing a melee Kineticist, as any melee elemental blast, yes, you can use it as a ranged attack or a melee attack. If you choose to make it a melee attack, you get to add your strength modifier, meaning if you sort of min-max a little bit and get a 16 strength, 18 constitution, and you hit them with a 2-action melee earth elemental blast, and you hit, you are dealing 1d8 plus 7. If you critically hit, you're doing 2d8 plus 14 at level 1. Now, you're in melee. Kineticists only wear light armor. They're not the most survivable thing in the world, but talk about a glass cannon. That is some beautiful damage. Also, to correct myself from earlier, the gate attenuator doesn't give you striking. Elemental Blast scales its striking on its own every 4 character levels. Base Kinesis is a level 1 class feature that I'm not going to get too deep into. It's basically prestidigitation, but for a Kineticist and only for the element they can control. If you're an air Kineticist, you can use Base Kinesis to create small amounts or alter small amounts of air. You can generate a small, negligible amount of air, which can be used to breathe, which is super cool. You can move the element, which means for 2 actions as an air kineticist, if there's like a 10-foot cloud of poisonous smoke, you could actually push that 20 feet in any direction, which I think is rad. And you can suppress it, meaning for 2 actions, you can completely eradicate that poisonous cloud as a kineticist, which is awesome. Now, it does say it's up to the GM exactly how much there is, how much the kineticist can really do. You know, if there's like a 30-foot explosion of poisonous gas, I don't think the kineticist can destroy all of it, but they might be able to make like a 10-foot square of breathable air by pushing the poison aside or destroying the poison, you know, for a round before the poison closes back in. This is going to be a very creative ability, and I think it's better than it was in the playtest. This is something you could use in combat, but it's going to require you to be very, very creative. Oh, the enemy is fighting you with a giant log that's on fire, but you're a fire kineticist? Use your base Kinesis to put the fire out. Although, once again, that gets a little cloudy because it says you can't alter an element that's being attended by a creature, so if the fire's on the log and the log is in the troll's hands, maybe that counts. I don't know. It's going to be a fun one. It's like prestidigitation. It's only going to be as good as your GM lets it be, but it's a pretty cool ability. And the last thing we're talking about here today is the 5th level class feature, your Gates Threshold. This is similar to when you make your kineticist, as you have 2 choices. You can either expand upon the elements you already wield, or add a new one to your repertoire, and you get this feature every 4 levels. This means if you started as a dual gate kineticist, every 4 levels you can add another element, which means by level 5 you could have 3 elements, 4 at level 9, 5 at level 13, and control all 6 elements as a level 17 kineticist. However, be careful, because you don't get as much of a reward by expanding into a new element as you do by doubling down on your current element. Let me explain. If you choose to fork the path, which is kind of funny, but I also get what they're going for, you gain control of a new element, and you gain a new impulse feat of your level or lower of that element. That's all you get. You can now use like elemental blasts of that element, and you get 1 impulse of that element. However, keep in mind, it specifically cannot be a composite impulse, which is something I didn't really go over, but it's simple enough. It's an impulse that requires you to have multiple elements in order to take it. So if you choose to fork the path and you add fire to your kineticist elements, you have to take a fire impulse, and it cannot be composite. And that's all you get from this class feature. However, let's say you were already a fire kineticist and you choose to expand the portal. Well, first off, you get an impulse feat of your level or lower that has to be fire. However, if you have multiple elements already, this one can be a composite impulse feat. If you've got fire and water, you can take a fire-water composite impulse feat. In addition to this, you gain a gate junction of your chosen element. Oh, actually, something I just learned, they don't even need to be the same element. If you started as a dual gate kineticist and you get to level 5, if you're fire and water, you could take a impulse feat that has the fire trait, but then you could take a gate junction with the water trait. They don't both have to be fire or both have to be water, they just both have to be elements you already control. But what is a gate junction? Well, you can see this large list of options here. These are the elemental gate junctions. Basically, you are owning in so hard on one element, you gain a permanent bonus. This bonus will be one of 4 things. It can be a critical blast, which is basically a critical specialization of that element. If you get a critical hit with an elemental blast of that element, you get the listed effect. If you choose the fire gate critical blast junction, you also deal 1d6 persistent fire damage on critical hits. You could also take elemental resistance, which gives you damage resistance equal to your level for 2 damage types based on the element you choose. If you're a fire kineticist, you gain damage resistance to all cold damage and fire damage. And if you make it to level 17, you become immune to those damage types. You can choose an aura junction, which permanently augments your kinetic aura as long as you are channeling an element. For example, if you're a fire kineticist, then any creature within 10 feet of you gains weakness to fire from your fire impulses, equal to half your level. Which means if you're level 6 at some point when you have this ability, all enemies within 10 feet of you take 3 extra damage from all of your fire impulses. And keep in mind, it's a weakness to fire, which means your wizard can cast Scorching Ray on them, and they still have a weakness to it. You can take the skill gate junction, which gives you trained proficiency in the listed skill as well as a free skill feat, and as long as you are channeling your elements, you get a permanent +1 status bonus to that skill, which scales as you get higher in level to +2 and +3. However, you can't use this to bump something from trained to expert. If you're already trained in that skill, you just become trained in something else. The final option here, if for some reason none of those sound intriguing enough to you, you can actually go back to the level 1 single gate subclass and choose any of those as your gate junction. So, if you're a fire kineticist, you can take the fire single gate junction to increase the damage die of all of your fire impulses by 1 step, which is kinda nuts. And finally, if you're like level 17 as a single element kineticist and you've just taken every single option under fire, you've taken the critical blast, the resistance, the skill, the aura, and the level 1 option, you can just take a normal kineticist class feat of your level or lower. And those are the bare bones basics of the kineticist. This video is 30 minutes of raw footage to cover the basics. I didn't go into any details. I didn't go super in-depth for any of this. Be on the lookout. I'm probably not going to upload a video for like a week after this because I'm just going to be working on the Kineticist deep dive. When I record that video, I will be going over every class feature, every gate junction, every impulse feat, every class feat, every class feature, every composite impulse in one video. It is going to take a long time, and AJ is going to be working hard on editing it. But you won't get that until after the 17th, when the book comes out publicly. So, if you want to get it on the 17th, you can pre-order it. It's on Paizo. I'm going to go spend the next 2 weeks mentally preparing myself to handle this. It might be it's going to be the longest video I've ever released on this channel. I hope you're ready for it. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed, and I'll see y'all soon, alright? Later.